The economic picture in New Bedford is turning around. It wasn't too long ago that the unemployment rate in the city was 13% or higher, 15%, 16%. Now the jobless rate is in single digits, 4.7%, according to the mayor's State of the City address. How did that happen? Here to provide some answers, Derick Santos, director of the New Bedford Economic Development Council. Derick, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning.
So how did this happen in a nutshell? Maybe it's something that can't be done in a nutshell. I know it took some years, but frankly, it has happened.
Yeah, well, there are two main ingredients to understand when you have a shift like that. The first is there are no silver bullets, right? So there's no one thing, one project that's ever going to solve New Bedford or really any community's ills when it comes to unemployment or increased investment or what have you. So that means if you're not going to have one thing, that means you have to have a balanced strategy that makes sense for that community. And the strategy in New Bedford would be different than the strategy in, say, Holyoke or Lawrence and or other communities outside of the state. So you have to have a balanced strategy. That strategy is usually based on good planning, which means good data, good community input, right? For a long time, and certainly accelerated under Mayor Mitchell, right? We've taken that approach. And then you have to stay at it for a sustained period of time. These successes do not happen overnight. We fully understand that, folks lead busy lives and, one day they read a headline that says, new boutique hotel, $10 million downtown, ribbon cutting sounds great. I can assure you that was almost a 40-month effort from developer interest through pre-planning and permitting and financing to getting to that point. So multiply that by dozens and dozens of projects, big and small. It does take time to have that happen. But what we found is if you have a good game plan, if you have a good team, the private sector folks, from the single person entrepreneur looking to open up a shop downtown to a company on the waterfront looking to expand their operations and advanced processing to a real estate developer, they'll recognize that. They'll recognize that this is a sound place, a stable place to invest in, a place that they can do a good project, where they'll have good partners, where they'll be profitable. This is all very important from the private sector side. And we can, work together. And the more that and then it starts to build on itself, right, Jim? So the first successes are always very, very difficult. And then as you move forward, it never gets easier, but it gets, it does get, takes a little bit less time, and the complexities can be removed a bit. And you just start to build on that success.
And we've seen some of this. Perhaps the place we've seen it the most is downtown New Bedford. And the growth in the hospitality industry, and in the whole entertainment, restaurant, all of that, I'll lump that into hospitality.
Yeah, we certainly do.
And it's just been tremendous.
Yeah, I think so. A vibrant downtown as a sort of central neighborhood for not just visitors, but this is a critical part of what we've been doing. Not just folks coming from other places, although we desperately want folks to come from other places, but for citizens throughout New Bedford and the surrounding towns, sort of the central hub, the metropolitan hub of our community, largely based on what would residents want to experience. And then working with the private sector to, once you understand those gaps, not just vacant storefronts, but gaps for use, food and drink was a huge gap. So putting together the analysis, right? Doing the study to know what should we target that's going to make sense for New Bedford, right? So that means doing the type of thing that really folks don't see, that, the really 2-inch thick economic studies of go after this and not that. And when you have that information and you can demonstrate that you're a credible partner to the private sector, it seems like all of a sudden, but over years, particularly over the past 5 or 6 years, Jim, that's when all of a sudden you see vacant storefronts turn into brew pubs. The vacant space above that becomes occupied. That's the bar studio. You see D&B come into the mix, D&B Burgers. We're working with them now on 2 expansions in the downtown. Cafe Italia just expanded to the downtown. Of course, I mentioned the boutique hotel. The larger projects tend to get the more interesting press. But that's a $10 million investment, and it brings headcount to the downtown. And all of a sudden, when you start to add up the numbers, and just this year alone, my staff, I think it's 11 or 12 new food-based enterprises, one or another, that are coming into the downtown. You start to add together the collective impact in terms of employment, payroll, local investment. Those numbers become meaningful. I would say it's also really important for the city, and the city's done a great job with this in understanding what can be done to support that, right? So from the city side, it's things like really making sure the Elm Street Garage is a first-rate facility for visitors and folks from other towns looking either for a night out or for a special event, things, those type of things. The improvements on Union Street, making sure there's top-notch infrastructure with full handicap accessibility at every place, making sure that is top-notch. When that is completed this spring, that sort of second phase, that'll be a big deal. And then the major piece of infrastructure, we call it infrastructure, that the EDC can, the role that my organization as a nonprofit small business assistance entity in helping with small business loans, helping with storefront grants, helping just with navigating the permitting process for someone who's opening up a business for the first time. Even making sure that there are workshops and other technical assistance available to folks who are starting these businesses, not just in the downtown, throughout the city, but the downtown is certainly a focus, to make sure that they're successful. What we want more than anything else is small businesses and businesses of any size to be successful in New Bedford. That's the bottom line. And
you've got 10 more projects in the works?
Well, I think, let's see, Apothecary just opened on Center Street.
Right.
Next door, there was the artists, the architect studio with her space. Cafe Italia expanded. I think that was last week. There was a ribbon cutting there. Mm-hmm. And I believe there are 5 or 6 more. Down to D&B Inc., D&B Burgers is doing 2, so if you want to count that as 2 or 1, that's up to you, but 2 different addresses, one on Union Street, an expansion at their existing location. And they're a perfect example of what we've seen in New Bedford, particularly over the past couple of years, where 75% roughly of what we have as an active project list of new growth, 75% of that is coming from companies that are here or have had some type of presence before. So either it's a real estate developer doing his second or third project, or D&B Burg is a perfect example, and there's certainly others, where they are here, they've expanded in their space, they're looking to expand again and then open up another spot. So it's always, we find it's always better to grow from within.
It's amazing to me how the fishing industry, the waterfront industries have held up, especially with the ground fish generating next to nothing in terms of business because of the Carlos Rafael case. But scallops continue to carry the day, and processing continues to carry the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's no doubt. In fact, yesterday I was just driving by a site right off Route 18 where Northern Wind is doing a 20,000 square foot expansion. And their equipment, state of the art, coming from, I'm not sure if it's Norway or Iceland. I'd have to check on that. But from Europe, right?
Okay.
And we should understand that when we're talking about fish processing, we're talking about advanced processing and manufacturing. These are sophisticated facilities. It takes a level of skill to work there and certainly manage them. And the equipment is quite advanced. Ed Washburn, the director of the New Bedford Port Authority, can speak at a high level of detail about these things. But the big picture bottom line is, for us, that's a strength that we want to continue to double down on, continue to push on that strength. The harbor is our number one asset. The mayor, of course, you hear the mayor say that all the time. So how do you take something that is sort of working maybe at 85% capacity and bring it up to 95%? It's much more difficult as you try to get closer to 100. But the work that the city is leading with the New Bedford Ocean Cluster and really looking at advanced processing, of course, scallops and fishing, but advanced processing, the future of aquaculture, the Internet of Things and the instrumentation on the water, of course, offshore wind. How do all those things work together where we never lose our fishing background, but we become more about diversification on the ocean and all the things that we can do to diversify the port? We'll always have to be watchful of how the economy and how work in particular tends to shift over time.
You're listening to Townsquare Sunday. My guest is Derick Santos, director of the New Bedford Economic Development Council. A caller this week to the Chris McCarthy program, Derick, said the state is no longer pushing the golf course site in New Bedford because of the deed restriction on that property. Is that true?
Well, we continue to work as recently as yesterday morning with Mass Development, the state agency that the city has an MOU with to pursue that project. The city has received 2 site readiness grant awards from Mass Development, one for $300,000, one for $100,000. And I think starting last week and I think continuing through this week, those engineers are working on the detailed survey work of the golf course. So what I can say is it's a complex project. We've always said that. It is a long-term project. I think we've always said that. And Article 97 and a host of other technical issues, both on that site in particular, and of course with traffic and airport and other environmental factors are all going to have to be worked in. Top of those is making sure that golf will be a functioning asset in the city. So those meetings are ongoing. There's a big table with a lot of technical folks at those tables between the private sector consultants and our state partners and folks from the city and folks from the EDC continue to work that through. So we're making progress, but it should be understood that there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of detail, and we really want to make sure that we have the best possible information and have good answers as we move forward.
So you've got 2 parts to that parcel, the golf course, which is protected, and another part. You'll need a road to get to that part. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah. But it's not, you haven't given up. No one's thrown their hands in the air and say, we can't do this.
No, that's certainly not the case.
All right. Hasbro, toy company, looking to relocate its headquarters. Is New Bedford interested? Do you have the space?
Yeah, so we've been in contact with the state on this already, with the Secretary of Economic Development, his office, particularly through what's called the Mass Office of Business Development. They're the state version of us in terms of recruiting for the state. And we have a great relationship with Maria Marasco, who's our regional director for MLBD, and have already been in contact on that. So that's in the very early stages. But that's a good example of where we hear something, read something, rumor or otherwise. We have great personal relationships with those state agencies. You should know that the mayor's been quite interested to make sure that we're in the conversation on that, and other entities that might be looking to relocate. So we'll see how it goes. I
was looking at your website the other day, and I said I spotted something. 455 County is available for development. 455 County is the old New Bedford High School, now the school department headquarters building, Roderick's building on County Street. Any bites on that?
Well, that is one of the sites on our website where we're trying to attract developer interest. There are several municipally owned sites that are on there from a report that was done a year and a half ago with a New York firm called HR&A, who looked at some sites that might be of interest. And so that was an early stage report. We put those sites on our website as sort of a, let's see what level of interest would be out there. There is interest in looking at historic buildings to redevelop for new uses. That particular site actually has a use in there now, and there's sort of a long methodical path that would need to happen for that to become available. But our role is to generate interest, right? So if a call from a Boston or Providence or other regional developer said, hey, we've got a fantastic use, it's going to, you really need to take a look at this in some detail. Certainly that would hasten the city sort of taking a close look at that. But our role in that regard is to constantly put new and different product out there and see what the level of interest is.
The North End, you got a vibrant group of people there who are looking to uplift that area. That always helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, Love the Ave.
Right.
So Love the Ave was a focus on our recent annual report, and that's a great example of grassroots folks coming together and taking the bull by the horns. We like that model, right? Where you have city and EDC are at the table, but not leading the conversation at the table. We're there to support. It's a perfect example of us coming together and putting the resources that we can to help small businesses on the Ave with their expansion plans. That may simply mean providing technical assistance so they better understand how to do whatever they do better, better resources. And as I said, we do offer a lending program. And sometimes it's simple as, look, I need to borrow $8,000 to buy a piece of equipment. Can you help with that? And the answer is yes, we can. But the Avenue is a great example of that broader picture, right? There's a vision for that place, and you have a grassroots team that's working together, and we get to support that team. That's one of our most exciting sort of efforts that we're involved in now, particularly because of the food, Jim.
It's a wonderful place. Offshore Wind. We come to this.
Yes.
We don't have a great deal of time, but is it the next big thing for New Bedford?
I think it's a big part of what's going to happen on the waterfront moving forward. I think the main thing to understand with the offshore, like any large scale project, right? It's big and complex and takes a lot of time. And the most important thing up front is to make sure that offshore wind and the commercial fishing industry that's already here, that's already generating billions into the state economy, is not hurt in any way. And we are confident that not only will they be able to be work together on the same waterfront, but they'll actually figure out ways to really collaborate and thrive over the long term. So it's going to be a major component of how the port moves forward.
What's the next milestone that we can look for?
Oh, geez. We have more ribbon cuttings coming in the downtown, and we have a few mill redevelopment projects that are about to get underway.
With wind?
Oh, I'm sorry. The next milestone with offshore wind. Vineyard Wind is going to start their construction before the end of the calendar year. So that's going to be a big milestone. And there are smaller steps along the way. And we have interest right now from Vineyard Wind, sort of what they call supply chain companies, looking for space in New Bedford, and we're helping with that. And also look to BCC, so Bristol Community College, and in their efforts to really establish sort of a national offshore wind specific training center starting in New Bedford. That'll all be part of the mix coming forward.
Derick Santos has been my guest here on Townsquare Sunday. Where can people learn more about the EDC?
Well, use the website as a resource. So nbedc.org, and go there. And we've done a lot of work to put a sort of toolkit together for small business. Great resources all in one place. And the other thing to simply do is stop by our office. We're at 1213 Purchase Street, second floor, right next door to where Glazer Glass is. Yeah. And we run a pretty informal shop. So you can just pop on in and we can chat about what you want to do.
Derick Santos, Director of the New Bedford Economic Development Council. It flew by this time. Thanks for coming in, Derick. And we'll talk to you again, I'm sure.
Great, Jim. Thanks again.
Townsquare Sunday returns in just one moment.